Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. First on the agenda is roll call. Could we please have roll call?
Mayor Bachman?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Knudsen? Trustee Smith?
Here.
Trustee Valentine? Trustee Stelter?
Here.
Trustee McInnes?
Present.
Trustee Schwartz?
Present.
Have a quorum. All right, we have a quorum and can continue. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve this evening's agenda.
Can I have a second?
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. All right, next up is announcement. So the Board of Trustees is looking for 2 in-town community members to serve on the Planning Commission. If you're interested, please turn in a letter of interest to the town clerk by April 19th. That's next Monday, I believe. No, Tuesday.
Could I
At noon.
ask could I ask you to elaborate on the position and let people know how long it's for? And who are we losing off the commission?
You're losing me and you're losing Dave. But that will be replaced by board members. But
These are community.
yes, yeah. Sam?
I was just pulling up my thing. I can
I
tell
think
you.
it's a 3-year term.
I think it's a 2-year term. I want to say,
It's,
but we're losing Steve Plissette.
Plissette and Lynn Howe.
No, Lynn's not up yet. Oh, yeah, she is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Steve and Lynn, because they were pretty much sworn in at
Yeah.
the same time.
So, but they've also been invited to resubmit their applications if they'd like to as well, so.
So, yeah, the only board member who's gonna be left seated is,
okay.
it meets once a month. And it kind of varies. We were trying to meet the first Wednesday of the month, but that has to be consistent, depending on what we've got going on. Yes,
Okay, is the deadline April 19th as in the packet or March 19th?
April 19th.
Okay,
yes,
okay,
I
great. Thank you.
misspoke. Okay, at noon.
Yes.
Okay, and then, yeah, so there will be 2 new members for the board for the May.
And if I can ask one more thing, I was reading through the ordinance. So the terms of the 2 that are coming on, does it have anything to do with the fact that there's an election in April? So are we past that major part of the ordinance and down to the last sentence? As terms expire, new or reappointed members shall be appointed for 2-year terms. Okay.
Yeah.
So would that code be good to revise? Is that all obsolete now? The main introductory?
Oh, right,
when they-
because
when
that was.
just was
set up.
initiated?
Yeah.
It's confusing.
We've
So,
got our RFP out to
Yes.
address and revise our code, so yes, it's something that
okay,
should be considered.
okay, thank you.
And I would suggest that we not have terms expire in an election year. Because it
Oh,
adds
that's
another
right.
layer of complexity.
And the other thing is that also you would have 4 new, if the 2 members who are currently serving decide not to serve, you have 4 new members on the planning commission. So a little continuity would be good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rick. That's a good point. Does anybody else have an announcement? No?
I just want to remind folks about our meeting tomorrow from 5 to 7. It's part of the master plan.
Yes. You'll be looking over infrastructure. And it's really, you should look at the packet. It's really interesting.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's happening here and not at the stage.
Correct.
Just making sure.
Okay. Next up is public comment. This is limited to 3 minutes per person. Any topic that's not included in actions and presentations. Yes, Mr. Bruner.
And I'm a candidate for the board, and there's a chance that I may wind up on this board. And if I do, and anyone that does, one aspect of being a trustee that I take pretty seriously is you're a fiduciary for the town. And fiduciaries are held to a higher standard than one definition I was reading today, the market. The way I take this is that like in money management. You can give money to a broker who can invest it and lose it on a big scam or a big idea, and that's the way your investment goes. But if you give your money to a fiduciary, he's not allowed to go after big dreams and big risks. He has to take the boring, proven road. He can't work on hunches. He needs to have a plan that's based on actual data and results from similar transactions. And I think this goes double in the town. It's been suggested for an item coming up later tonight that you dream big. And I don't think fiduciaries get to work that way. It's a risk. It may work out, it may not. Another aspect of a fiduciary is that if you go for the big one and you don't quite grab the brass ring, you can be held personally liable. So as for myself, as a member of the board, I take the fiduciary thing very seriously. And in fact, there's almost nothing that a trustee has to do. A board that really wanted to do it, you could probably have 5 hours of meeting a year and do everything the law requires. Everything else is extra.
Thank you, Mr. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Wynn? Like, just in a minute, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Stephen Keenan, 514 Third. I want to thank some of the people that are on the board that will be leaving soon if I get a chance to see another board meeting before they leave. And I'm especially Mary did a fantastic job. Thank you. Really stellar, especially with the way during very contentious meetings, you kept your calm and tried in many ways and successfully to keep people sane and trying to work together. I think Morgan is leaving too. You did a great job too, Morgan. So, thank you. One time I was dating a woman. She was living in the Bayfield outside of Durango when I was in Boulder, and we would meet here in Paonia. This was Midway, and we had friends that had a farm here. And driving through the valley one time, Gwen, who, when I met her, she was charging $75 an hour as a therapist. Overnight, she decided, I'm going to raise my rates. She raised them to $250 an hour, and nobody blinked an eye. She was good at what she did, really, really good. The stars in Hollywood were calling at 3 o'clock in the morning, and Gwen would be working. So we're driving through the valley, and she said, Stephen, this valley has a scarcity problem. Everyone is thinking in a scarcity mentality. And I'm not saying, I'm not pushing that we should become focused on being affluent, but I do think that we do at times, maybe it was because a lot of the money came in from underground in the coal mines, and I'm not knocking the coal miners. They had a lot to do with starting this town. But I do think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit. I want to talk about this treasure hunt, but not today. But that would be attracting some really good money that people come into the town, they spend the money, they go home. And one of our best places is the community-supported agricultural communities on the Front Range. When I talk to them at farmers markets on the Front Range, and I say, I have a house in Paonia. They said, we'd love to go up there. We've heard of it, but we've never been there. If we can attract that kind of money that comes, spends money, goes home, that could be a good thing to pursue, I think. And the community-supported agriculture communities on the Front Range could be a good way to consider. But I do think that we are selling ourselves short.
Just a couple seconds.
Yeah. And thank you so much for your time. And I hope, Madam Mayor, that you continue with the grant pursuit. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm a stop watch, so.
Arlene Nierenberger, Lamborn Mesa Road. I agree with that first speaker. I think the town does not realize their liability with many of their actions. So I just would like to back up the first speaker. And I appreciate that I'm allowed to speak for 3 minutes, but it's just that, it's not communication. True communication doesn't happen unless it's a two-way street. And I have never seen that happen here.
Thank you. And thank you for signing. All right, she's up. Ms. Watson.
I'm Suzanne and I live in Paonia. First of all, I'd like to express my frustration with the fact that people can comment to you guys via email. We never see them. I've got to come up to the podium. I've got to state my name. You want people to tell me where I live. It goes on YouTube, goes all around the world forever and ever and ever. And yet there are people who can comment in perfect anonymity. Why, how can you require me to state my name? And in fact, I'd suggest that you're controlling my public speech at this point. Unless it's like absolutely necessary because it's a hearing, I think that should be up to the discretion of the speaker. If they want to be named in the newspaper or whatever. But I don't see a consistent policy here. Also, I think it's really hard to hear who's voting what as board members, or sometimes who's talking when you listen to it on the YouTube. And what about maybe speaking your names before you start talking? You're the elected officials, so it's particularly relevant to know who's speaking what and how you're voting. That being said, at the last meeting, I had asked to do a Cora to see the grant application for this VOTEC grant that's being proposed. And I believe I was told, I think we heard it was preliminary. It was just something that was done online as an entree into the process. And it also wasn't available for viewing because it was all done online. So I'm a little bit frustrated because I kind of want to know more about this application process. Is there any point where the public can see how we're being portrayed as a town, how this grant is being written? I'm very curious. And you know, if it's all done online, is there a possibility of doing screenshots before before the send button is hit? So I'd really like to know what the timeline is. I think the deadline is the March 22nd at midnight. So hopefully we can hear a little bit more about that. Thank you. I think we need to be very transparent with this. We're talking about a lot of money, and there was no planning discussions about this in all our visioning sessions that we've had over the past couple of years. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the board? All right, seeing none, let's move on to consent agenda. Could I give a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Any questions, discussions? Okay, all in favor?
I actually have a question because I saw the poster for this event. And it sounded like it was going to be at Alfred Ames itself. But is this the Alfred Ames dinner that will be at the Ellen Hansen Center?
I was confused about that, but I've talked to them and followed up, and they're requesting one for the teen center. And if you grant the special event permit, they can't take it anywhere else. If it's out in the county, that has nothing to do with us. They can't move it to another location. It's either there on that date and time or not at all.
Well, I guess I was just wondering, is that the same event?
I wondered that too. So, but
You don't know.
think so.
Okay. I saw the posters and went, what? So, okay.
All right, if there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Next up are staff reports.
I'm going to give an oral report, so I didn't have enough time to finish a town administrator report in writing, but that'll come next week and we'll post it online. So just a a brief update on what we've been doing. In front of you is the final draft audit with a management discussion analysis letter that will need to change. I only just got the audit, the final draft today. I didn't have enough time to change my numbers. And I'll talk more about that when we get to the actual item number 4, consideration of the audit. We've also been working on a number of issues with building permits, but also water meters. And so we've already, so as I mentioned in a previous report, there will be a handful that have come in or that will come in that need to be adjusted. And I think we're up to 282 now that have were changed in our system by a previous employee and are now accurately reading. And so we had to go back and do some water usage modifications. It's a long process, but we're improving, and we're getting to that point where hopefully our next bill, which will be generated next week, or actually read next week, should read accurately. So it won't charge somebody $1 trillion. Yes, that was actually a bill that was trying to be generated. It was for over $1 trillion. So that was because of a multiplier and a resolution change to a meter. So it read more dials and then it multiplied that number by 100. And so you get $1 trillion. And so that was the issue. And we've since changed that, modified the multiplier to reflect the change in the resolution. So we'll do that again. And then we had to go back in and modify some of the reads because they were reading too high. So we've corrected those. Like I said, 282 of them. It's a daunting task, but we're going to break them out as we go along. 1099s was also a big issue that we had run a preliminary report. Looked like there was 141 that needed to be issued. I've since been able to whittle that down. We only sent out 20, but there are 15 more that should have gone out. That means that they've met the criteria to receive a 1099, but did not generate one. And the reason for that, and I found 2 vendors that historically should have received a 1099, but haven't, as long as we've had this Casell system. And that's due in part to how they were set up as vendors in our system. So those are being changed as well. So we're getting there. Now, I say all of this to say we're also hiring. So we have I think we came to 4 full-time positions and 1 part-time position that we're hiring within the town. One of those full-time positions is in town hall. The part-time position is also in town hall. And then we also have full-time positions at Public Works. And as of Sunday, we have a full-time position for an officer to fill as well. So not for bad reasons. They've found love and are moving to Arizona. So, but those are the things that we're working through on our side. So yeah, I've been a little irritable, and part of that is as I dig, I find things that need to be changed. And even though they've historically been something that has needed to be changed, it's not something that I can just not do. It's something that it should have always been done, and it needed to be done right then. I will say that in your disbursements today, I did have to make an EFT ACH to our CIRSA, that's our insurance provider, for both workers' compensation and personal casualty or property casualty. That was due and it needed to be paid. So you'll see that in the disbursements for next meeting.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Disbursements for tonight. They were not on the agenda under the consent agenda. And Morgan and I did look at about 6.
They're there. It's just, it didn't go down one more line. So on the consent agenda, it's next to cause.
Oh, it's right under there.
It's right
Okay,
there.
so I just want the public to know that there were 6 or 7 vendors that we did look at the invoices to approve. Normally, we have a paper copy of those, and we didn't get that tonight.
Oh.
I don't think, unless it's on the table, I didn't see it.
No. So I was out of the office, but I'm back. So we'll make sure that that's taken care of, and whatever's in an amended agenda will include disbursements. So, okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's all I've got. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, I noticed that my water bill went up, so obviously it's now charging correctly.
Yeah, you will, you will see that it will have gone up $5 on average. That's for your base rates. So those are going up no matter what. So you should see that on your bill as well. At least in town, folks, in town residential.
Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, I have just a couple questions. Of the 4 new hires, will you remind me how many are attrition for whatever reason versus new?
1 new.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Perfect. And then can you also remind me how many in-town water taps do we have? I know you said you had to change like 280. What's an estimate?
I can do better than an estimate.
Oh, okay.
In 1 second. So,
Percent.
Would you say?
Oh, I was gonna say just percentage.
Yeah, just so I can get a sense.
so obviously it's fluctuating, and I'll need to add, I think, 1 to this. So reduce one of the standbys and add it to an actual tap, and it's for a new home going in that had purchased a standby tap years ago and have been paying for it. So give me 1 second.
I have, in my records, I have 966 in-town water taps, 632 out of town. If you have different numbers, I'm going to amend my numbers.
Okay. What should be cash flow? Apologize, computers. It's a large spreadsheet.
You can come back to it too after the police report.
Oh, no, I've got it right now. Okay. So we currently have 833 in-town residential, 133 in-town commercial, 195 out-of-town residential. And those are those that are serviced directly by us, not by a water company. 11 out-of-town commercial and 426 water company taps that we service. And those breakdowns are for water companies are down there.
Thanks, that's very helpful.
Any other questions, trustee Sparks? No? Okay, anything else from anyone? All right, let's move on to Chief Leininger.
Yeah, so instead of a written report, really the focus the last 2 weeks has been preparing for staff changes, for officer meeting, and then our second/third revisions of our ordinances that will be coming up tonight. Those are really what we're working on, particularly given our time frame of legal counsel. That was kind of what we're working on.
Any questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to actions and presentations. Item number 1, consideration of approval of Second Amendment to the Urban Rural Continuum.
So this is in response to being able to extend the existing grant that we had and exhaust all of the funds instead of giving back $7,200 in that grant. And so this will allow us to actually implement policies on short-term rentals and accessory dwelling units. And we do have a meeting scheduled specifically for that on March 19th. And so that's what this is intending to do. It's to help us to get to the finish line and get some good policies in place. It also help us with implementing or adding the housing needs assessment and tweaking it so that it'll fit into our housing element for our comprehensive plan. As long as it addresses affordable housing. So those are the kinds of things that this will be doing. And this amendment is to adds a total not to exceed of $7,237.50, which would bring the total contract to $86,147.
Okay, thank you. Comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. Board discussion.
I apologize, there's no staff reports with this either. It was 1090, I was focused on 1099s and being it.
I just have a question about, it says not to exceed. For one, I have to say, I think they're fabulous. They do really good work, and I'm very happy that they're gonna continue on with this. Should we just assume it's a flat rate, or is it not to exceed billed at an hourly rate?
It'll follow their normal their normal billing, which was done by hourly based on the consultant work.
Perfect. Right. Anything else?
So it's not lump sum, if that's what it is.
Okay, if there's nothing else, can we get a motion, please?
I motion to approve the amendment and continue for the continuation of Urban Rural Continuum LLC for not to exceed amount of $7,237.50.
Second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, that motion passes. Next up is consideration of change order number 2, SGM, the 15 grand realignment, Safe Pathways for Paonia at $32,500.
So this is, and I don't know if we've got an updated memorandum with this. I think we got it after the packet was published, but so it does change to say change order number 2, not change order number 1. And this is for additional survey and engineering specific to stormwater along the project. So this specifically addresses the conflict with Paonia Ditch. After having a meeting with them, they really didn't want us to continue the practice of directing all of our stormwater for the street into their ditch area, because they felt like it would flood downstream. And quite honestly, we, as the town, we didn't want to have an agreement with them where they could rip out any improvements that we may have done to protect their ditch. So this change order helps us to move that stormwater towards the North Fork, the North Fork of the Gunnison, and either goes all the way to the bridge or through a maintenance agreement with CDOT to go through their yard to get to the ditch. I'm not an engineer, but what their plan and design is so that it spills higher than any sort of level that the river could ever rise to. So that way we're not infiltrating our storm system with river water. But that's what this additional cost is. It's for additional design and surveying work. It's definitely needed because of the conflict with Paonia Ditch.
All right, comment from the public? Yep, that's one.
So I'm curious, I guess I'm a little confused looking at the aerial photograph of that and the blue highlighted area. And are we talking about doing these improvements on county property? Because that's not within the town limits. And so does there have to be an MOU or agreements with the county, or is it all in the CDOT's right of way? Or we have to have an agreement with them for digging and installing this. So it's just a question. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none. All right, discussion. Yeah.
I just had a question, being completely unfamiliar with stormwater systems. Is the siphoning that SGM is talking about designing, is that a passive system? It's done gravitationally?
I don't have SGM here. I don't, they were talking about a siphon, but my understanding is it's where the ditch crosses underneath the storm system. And what we were looking at doing was making it so that the storm goes underneath the ditch, where it crosses underneath the road. That way, if they ever have to do any maintenance on it, they're not tearing up our storm sewer system. So the siphon thing had something to do with that conflict and where we were going to go. So we're going underneath the Paonia ditch instead of the other way around. So.
And it is a passive system. There won't have to be pumps or anything.
Oh, no, and it's all gravity.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's McKenna.
Yeah, so the 32,500, is this included in that estimate of increased costs that we had gotten, I think a couple meetings ago of the 15 grand realignment? almost doubling. Is this included in that original number? It's on top of, okay.
Yeah, so this is an additional amount. But we did,
Well, the positive thing is.
it should wash out.
Yeah, and in truth, the grant that we wrote for the RAISE grant, we did put a cushion in there that should cover this amount.
Yeah, I was just for my own kind of where the project is at. I was curious if it was in addition or not.
Yeah, trustee Schwartz.
Oh, go ahead.
So to answer a question, being a professional that's done this for close to a decade, as part of any sort of CDOT agreements, you have to have all of the right of way acquired, and I've been working on that since December. We have an MOA with the county that's ready to be signed. It should be on an agenda pretty soon. And I've already acquired it from the school board. You already saw that. It's been approved by both the planning commission and the board of trustees.
Okay, forgive my ignorance on this. Is this money that are we spending this now, or are we waiting for all the grant money to come in?
We have to spend it now. So
Okay.
this is designed to get to that FOR review. So that's this like 60% complete set of drawings. That's the big picture stuff. So we've already done the 30%, which kind of lays out where we're going. We've already done the survey. This is to get us to 60%, which is that, I mean, at that point, any major changes could significantly impact the project. That last 40% is like detail stuff. What size, how much, then we start talking quantities. How much fill are we going to need? How many, that's what happens after the FOR meeting. So, and the reason that last meeting where we increased it so much was because we found that we had really bad soils after Geotech came out to do some potholing and to see what our soils were subsurface. And it was pretty bad. So typically when I start a road project, I like to see geotech happen before design starts. This just kind of came in late. So.
Yes,
If I might, so I know we have a pretty large 1.3 million from CDOT for this.
1 million, Tim.
1 million, okay. Can you tell me what the RAISE grant is? Because I don't think that's come in front of us, has it?
Yes, it has, but it was a meeting I forgot.
Okay,
This is a Department of Transportation grant, federal grant program. We have gotten letters of support from both the senators, from CDOT, from schools.
So we got a letter of support from the executive director of CDOT,
Right.
which
It's almost $3 million.
so if we get this grant, we could work on other streets.
No, this has to be for that intersection.
Is it gonna cost $3 million? Oh, is it gonna cost $3 million?
No, it isn't, but we put a cushion in there. We needed $1.5 million. I'm sorry, I'm confusing things. No, the project was close to $3 million. We put in $890,000, I believe, was what the grant amount was for.
And so what that also does is it covers the cost of construction engineering and general contractors to manage the project so that it will be a time suck once we start building it. That would not only take my time, but also Corey's time to be like a field superintendent. And so what this does is it also covers the cost of managing the project as well.
Okay, thank you.
When I say, it would be, once we start construction, it would be like an everyday, that's what we'd have to focus on. It would be a pretty intense operation.
Anything else from the trustee? All right, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve change order number 2 for SGM for the 5th and grand realignment safe pathways for Paonia at a total of $32,500.
All right, second.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Thank you. That motion passes. All right, next up is consideration of approval to offer the school district to purchase the VOTEC building for $1,500,000. Okay, we did meet with Governor Bennett's office and Governor Hickenlooper's office. Yes, we got it. And they have given us the go-ahead that we can go ahead and put in for this money. The first thing that we submitted was just an intent to file. And then they went through with all the intents and then interviewed the people. And then those who they thought would be acceptable to their qualifications we're given the forms to go ahead and file. So we will be doing that probably end of this week, next week, depending on what the board says. We have managed to collect 134 signatures from citizens, and I have had people chase me down to sign this letter of support for buying the VOTEC building. Again, there is the asbestos report was included this time. I tried to get Liz to get the maintenance, how much the maintenance costs every month, and she was not able to get that in time for the packet. Also how much the insurance is, and she was unable to get that as well. So that will be additional, but we don't have it tonight. And yes, we will, even if we make this, when we make this offer, before we buy this building, a full inspection will have to take place, just like buying a house. We do the inspection, we do all the same kind of hoops that you jump through for this. So it is going to go through the USDA Community Facilities Grant. And we will have to come up with a 25% for that. And that was discussed with the representatives from Senators Bennett and Luper as well. The other thing I found out on Monday when I was on call is that we will find out if we are written into the US budget rates and whether or not. And then if we don't get written into the budget, then it's dead. But they will take the things that have been submitted, the applications that have been submitted, put it into the appropriations committees for different project areas where people are looking for funding, and then appropriations will see the in the end. All right, public comment. All right. I think Christina had her hand up first.
Christina Patterson in Price Road. So I'm taking that this USDA Communities Facilities Grant is the same as this Senator Bennett's congressional appropriations request, congressionally directed spending. So I'm assuming that's all the same thing, because I didn't know where to look exactly, but I found it, and it's bennett.senate.gov. And I didn't realize when you were all talking about this, I looked on that website and I checked out what other municipalities were asking for, what their asks were, because I did not realize that you could actually use this for water infrastructure. And some of these communities are asking big. They're getting, well, they got in 2024, $2, $3, $4, $5 million for these water project infrastructure projects. So they're also asking this year. And I'm just wondering, did all of you know that we could use this money, that are huge amounts of money, for our water infrastructure? Because that's really important. And I don't know why we weren't asking last year for it, for the water. And I don't know why we're not asking this year for the water infrastructure. Let's see. I remember when Leslie Kuzmeyer, before she left, she had endless amounts of meetings, met with all the public works, all the, divisions, the engineers, and she generated a number of what it was going to take to comprehensively fix the water system. And that number is $47 million to deal with our water system. So if these grants are available right now at like $5 million for last year, this year, all we have to do is ask. I do not know why we are not asking for this, because water is the most important thing. And I don't know why we're not focusing on it. You still have an opportunity to redirect and focus on what's necessary. The deadline to complete this request is March 29th at 11:59 p.m. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, wants versus needs. This list of supporters is a violation of your fiduciary duty, and it's a betrayal, and it's a lie. that you listen to everybody. This is only a list for supporters. This is not a survey of the community and the level of support in the community. And that's a big mistake because everybody wants to listen to everybody, except it's not happening. This should be for something that we need, not something that's 3 times as big as something we'd like to have. This is something that if you're going to do this, you should have been talking about this years ago. You should have had this all wrapped up before you guys left office. You're going to leave this for the next board. And whatever you think makeup of that next board might be, you don't know. And it's a real disservice. This has the potential to suck the soul out of any board that has to deal with managing this albatross. This extra space is not a bonus. Extra space is a huge liability. You're going to wind up with offices that are the size of a classroom for 30 people with a desk in one corner and a filing cabinet, and the rest of it just gathers dust. It's a hazard. The architecture for this is all wrong for public buildings. This is a place for kids to be in school, designed in 1930s. Look at the architecture here. You've got tall ceilings, you've got light, you've got acoustics, however they are. You don't get any of that with this. You don't get to move the town shop over there. It's not big enough for the town shop. You're not counting on a remodel. You think it won't need one. Well, I can guarantee you it's going to need a lot of money to keep this thing going. So you got a couple of weeks here. Turn around. We've been talking about fixing these other things that we have to have. Please reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. No, sir. You need to raise your hand to be called on. Yes, please come. So you don't just get to stand up and walk up. You have to raise your hand to be recognized.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
My name is Rick Pierce. I live up in Apple Valley. I went on the walkthrough of the school the other day, and it might be a great building for the community to have if we're all fixed up and ready to go. I have 25, 30 years experience in construction. I have been on the end of managing commercial structures and industrial structures. I've been an asbestos coordinator for a school. And I went through that school building, and what I see is something that's going to take a lot of money to go ahead and use. You've got all kinds of space. Bill kind of alluded to it, much more space than you need. And Ms. Bachman told me, well, maybe we could lease it out to other people and so on. That would be great, but we don't know what it's going to cost to get that building in shape. It needs a new roof. What is it, 30,000 square feet? Is that right? Or more? That's a huge expense. And you're not even addressing it. You got 15,000 a year in utilities. I talked to someone on the school board. They indicated that it was $35,000 a year for maintenance. And I don't think that includes the yard maintenance, for doing the yard work and so on. What is it going to cost to insure that building? That's a huge building. You're going to have liability insurance. They already have had people breaking into the building, so you're going to have security. It sounds like the town will need to hire 3 or 4 people on a full-time basis to maintain that. I don't know what the town's paying in salaries these days, minimum maybe 30,000, which I would say is pretty minimal these days. And then renovations. I don't believe you're not going to do some renovations. It's just not something that the town will do. If the next board that comes in, they'll want to do renovations. The citizens of the town are the ones that are going to have to pay for it. We've got the water system. You got 5 years, the next 5 years, we're going to go ahead and be raising the rates on the water system. What's going to happen with this building when all these different costs come in and the town we're going to have to pay those rates. So you guys are going to vote for it. You don't have any plan for how you're going to pay for all these different costs. I've got a whole list of things. There's no inspection report. You've alluded to the fact that you don't have all the information, but you're ready to make an offer on the building. The school district wants to get rid of it for one reason. They can't use it, and it's costing a pile of money. And that's a minimum cost because it's just sitting there vacant. They're doing the minimum to keep the facility from falling apart, and it's not adequate.
I'm
It's
sorry,
my time up.
your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you
I
very
just
much.
hope that the town will do some due diligence before they do make the offer and don't follow through on it right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wish to agree with the previous speakers, and I see this as just one more example of the town being ruled by grant money. I spoke of Agenda 21 previously. I don't know if anyone heard of that. It was the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, all these people who want one world government are controlling the local towns by giving grant money for this, for that, for this. And they're grabbing it without giving thought, like Rick said.
Thank you. Yeah.
Shirley Patterson, Rio Grande. It's a white elephant, what you're looking at. And I'm feeling insulted as a citizen of Paonia that you did this without any consultation of the entire population, voting population, citizens of Paonia. There was no mailing, there was no announcement, there's nothing, no information. I have neighbors that are saying, what the hell is going on? What are we getting involved in? We don't even know that, and they know what that building represents. It's a failure. It's a money trap. And when I hear my sister saying that you can get those same grants that you're running after for the VOTEC to fix the essential services that this town damn well needs, in addition to the water, sewers, streets, potholes, trees, parks, that's your responsibilities, and you're ignoring that to get this vanity project for whatever supporters you have, and the idea that you're floating about an art center with affordable housing. Dream on. The town doesn't want this. The people of the town don't want it.
Thank you. Ms. Watson, I saw your hand up.
All these notes here, that's kind of scattered. So I do wish there would have been board level discussion about prioritization before a grant was put in this direction. What are the other projects? And it would have been nice to have a public discussion before this was kind of just popped in front of us, because I don't see this as a priority. There's that $325,000 town match that has to go toward this. I've been told that there's not enough money for pruning the town right of ways, but we can just cough up $325,000 for this VOTEC purchase. So if you're going to be in the business of leasing, I want to see your business plan. I don't see how you can enter into this project without showing us a plan. Your water enterprise is going to be housed out of the building. I mean, it's here now, but the administrative cost for the water enterprise, it's going to be more expensive in that building. And I'd like to know, is that going to come out as higher water rates? I want to be able to afford to live in this town as I get older. Not only water rates, but the taxes, the cost of town government. I don't understand. You're planning on buying it with a grant, and then all the discussion about remodeling it is going to be grant. But depending upon grants at the national level and this volatile political climate, I think is really risky. You don't know what's going to happen in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, and grants might dry up. And I mean, what else? I think there's so many more important projects here that are grant worthy if we're going to be applying for grants. We do have that SGM, huge SGM engineering study of the Third Street rebuilding plan from 2012 that was sitting on a shelf gathering dust now because we didn't have enough money for it. And now we'll have to have the engineering done again by SGM. I mean, because it's that old. So I heard the word time suck used a little earlier about the street project. Time suck, staff time suck is what's going to happen there. I want to ask you, you say there's no remodeling needed. Well, there could be a mold problem in the building. How much did it cost to put the sound system in this town hall, in this little room in town hall? And how is that going to translate when you start having to make these little improvements just to make that building more usable? And I'm not talking about big remodels. I mean, this was like tens of thousands of dollars, wasn't it? Or we got grant money for it. But anyway, there's just going to be a lot of nickel and diming. Look at the 2 change orders we just had for the street project. You get a grant and bingo, change order 1, change order 2.
All right.
The prices just.
Your time is up, Ms.
Yes,
Watson. Please
the
wrap
costs
up.
just keep going up and up and up. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Keenan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I hope our incoming Mayor Page is going to allow me to say Madam Mayor too. I feel that we should look at Grand Lake, the town of Grand Lake, because they were offered a school building. They took it, and they worked it out with the school district, and they took it, and everyone in Grand Lake seems to be really, really happy with that project. And this was done recently. So I think it's something that we should take a look at. I feel that we are not going to ever have the opportunity to get a property like this at the price that we're being offered. I think Christina's bringing up the water issues and grants is good. Can we possibly apply for that too? But I do feel that this is a building we're not going to have this opportunity again. And a lot of people are, I think, absolutely correct. Remodeling prices are going to be higher than we might be thinking right now, but we don't have to do everything all at once. The building is in relatively good shape. It was a well-built building to start with. So I think it should be done. And I think if it's done right, why don't we have a contest for the architects? Rather than hiring an architect, do a contest with the architects. See what they come up with, and make this something that brings the community together, as opposed to opposing it. I disagree with folks that I'm listening to here. I think the community is for it. I don't think it's on people's radar all that much. It hasn't really been discussed all that much, and all we're talking about tonight is making an offer to the school district. And then we're going to have all sorts of inspections and due diligence and negotiating with the school district about the final price and the terms. And I think that I feel the school district would really like the town to take this building on. I might be wrong about this, but I do feel that way. And I think that we should include, while we're negotiating with the school district, getting the school bus depot. Get that building too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Anyone else?
Grand Lake spent $10 for the building.
Mr. Werner, please. You had your chance to speak. Anyone else?
I'm all for it.
Yeah, all right. Enough. You get a chance to speak. You took your chance. When you are sitting in this room and you have not been recognized by the chair, you do not have the right to speak. And that's in Robert's Rules. So please, be respectful of each other and the people on this board. All right, I would like to go into answer some of the questions that came up. First off, the congressional discretionary spending, again, it has to go through a program, but it is a specific line item in the US budget. So that it's not like you go and say, yeah, we're going to buy this school building, give us the money. We have to go through an already existing program, which is the USDA Community Facilities. It is not because it is coming from congressional spending, we do not have to comply with all the requirements of the USDA grant. And some of those have income restrictions on them, and we would have to do between $50,000 and $75,000 match because of our income, our personal income in here. So we get a break and we get down to the lowest minimum, which is 25% for that. Second of all, water infrastructure. One of the reasons that we did not go for water infrastructure is because the chances of getting that is relatively nil. Lots and lots of people put into this, and this is from the senators' offices. This is from talking with the Senator Hickenlooper and Senator Bennett's offices. Lots of people put into this. Very, very few are chosen for this. So we chose to go in a route that has the best chance of actually getting funding. And I mean, you can shake your head and you can say that's not true, but I have been the one who has been talking. Stephan and I have been the one who have been talking to the senators' offices. So we know what they are telling us, and they are telling us this has a good chance of being funded, whereas water projects do not. So that's that. And then as far as community support, part of this grant is you have to show community support. I am not going out and knocking on doors. I have gone up and down Main Street and asked businesses if they would support this. And if I see people on the streets, I ask them if they would support this. But they are coming to us to say, yes, we want this. This is not a hunch. You know, this isn't the next shiny thing. This is something that could very much benefit the town. Ms. Patterson, please remain quiet. Thank you. This could really benefit the town in the long term. When you talk wants versus needs, and this has come up over and over. This is a want, this isn't a need. But I would like to remind the board that for years, the water infrastructure was considered by this board, and I sat on the board for 2 years and fought against this before I became mayor, that the water infrastructure was a want. It wasn't a need. No, the pipes aren't breaking. We're okay. We don't need that right now. And it goes for other things too. This is not the first time that the wants have been considered as wants instead of needs, because it's long-term thinking. We cannot, as a board, we are supposed to be up here. We're supposed to be at the 30,000 foot level and looking toward the future of the community. Yes, we look at the immediate needs and we deal with the immediate needs, but part of our mission too is to look to the future and to see what would benefit this town in the future. As Mr. Keenan said, there is no chance that we will ever get anything like this for this price ever again. And so as a benefit for the town and as something that will help the town become a better place to live, this is a great investment for not that much money. And that, you know, it's also been brought up that it's going to raise our taxes. Our taxes are based on our mill levy. We have not raised our mill levy. This cannot increase our taxes because it does not change the mill levy. So that, and then it's also been said that the national, if we take grants, it's going to increase national debt. And that doesn't make any sense either, because the national debt is set when the budget is created by the US Congress, and the grants that are allocated through that are there. We can either take advantage of that money or we can just ignore it and let it go away. But this is not going to impact the national debt at all. And then the other thing, that's the House wants versus needs. I want to remind the board that they did not think that the housing was an issue. They thought that that was, it was maybe a want versus a need until we had the community survey or the community strategic planning session. And the community came out to us and basically screamed in our face that housing was a huge issue. And it was only after that the board recognized that this is a need and not a want. And that's when we have the housing needs assessment brought up. So that's all I have to say on this subject. Members of the board.
There you have it. The mayor, by Robert's Rules of Order, runs a fair and open meeting and does not try to sway the discussion. Good night.
Thank you.
You violated the Constitution. It says you cannot.
All right, point of order, yes. You are not allowed to speak in the meeting according to Robert's Rules of Order unless you have been recognized by the chair. And I can ask our lawyer to say about that and the Constitution and all the rest of that. But in this meeting, we have rules that are posted and are listed in on the back of every agenda. It's in every packet that what the rules are for the public, and you do not speak unless recognized by the chair, and I am the chair. Thank you. All right, board discussion.
I'm happy to go first.
Go first.
So I have a series of comments. So first of all, I'm really glad that we toured the building. And for anybody who didn't go, I'm sorry, because it was really important to see the building. First and foremost, 34,000 square feet is huge. And I am not for this project. I'll just say it right off the bat. And here is the reason. I never have heard at any of these community meetings that we need a new town hall, we need a new public works. There's been no business plan done for this. I feel like this is not fair to the staff. This building will require more staff, and we do not have a revenue stream to pay for that staff. That's my one biggest thing. There is no income generation potential that has been established. I don't know what this building is worth. I don't know if anybody would buy it right away, but we would need the money from this building to pay for what we need to have to even occupy that building in the short term. So I read the asbestos contractor's report, and there are 10 bathrooms in the building that have friable asbestos sheeting that is now considered friable. That needs to be fixed. And that was not part of this contemplation. And frankly, I'm concerned because this was never a discussion of the board. This was your baby that you brought to us without any background information, and only because of the conversation 2 weeks ago are we seeing the building. Are we seeing any of the utilities? Which, by the way, the utilities we see are for 2 years. One's for 2021, it's $14,000, a little bit over. For 2022, a little under $16,000. And that is for a minimal use of that building. We know there's been a room or two used for training. I have no idea what that building would cost to heat and the electricity when it's completely full. We have no idea. So let me keep going. There was lots of water damage, especially in the gym. And I'm very worried about mold. And I'm worried about how much there is going on under that drop ceiling in that building that we have to address. We have no money to pay for those kinds of repairs that have to be done and inspections before somebody can safely be in that building. Nothing. We know nothing. We don't know how much the insurance is. That's a big deal. We don't know how much the maintenance cost is, but I did overhear one of the realtors say that that building had 2 permanent employees to manage that building. And that we also would have to have somebody managing the exterior, all that grass and all the irrigation. And it's town water that it's irrigated with. There is no ditch water for that building. And the other thing that was good to see is that the part of the building that would constitute for public works, in its current configuration will not accommodate the public works content that we already have on Fourth. So if we still need that building, that is less revenue we can get by selling an asset. And again, none of this has been discussed appropriately. We are going on a wing and a prayer. And I have to say, at least the gals that were there from the realtor were very candid about what is going on with the building and what needs to be done, including a new roof. And one of the things that I can't think of her name, the main oh, Liz said is that because it's a flat roof, you have to redo it every, I believe she said 6 or 8 years. And it would be better if you built it up and had an angled roof. I have no idea what that costs. So, and here's 2 more things. I feel like it's very cavalier to assume that we're going to go for a grant for the 25%, which is actually $375,000. All of this distracts from what we need to be doing and getting money for, and that is our water system and the sewer that all needs to be replaced before it becomes an emergency. This is a distraction for the board, for the staff, and for our budget to have this building without a full slate of income and people that are saying, we will pay you this much to come into this building. We have none of that. So, and I do not want to lose $25,000 in earnest money when we back out potentially. So for these reasons, and I'd like to reiterate the email that we all received from Michelle Pattison on February 25th with some really good questions, none of which have been answered. So I, as a citizen and as a trustee and the incoming mayor, I do not see this as an opportunity at this point in time when people have said what they want this town to concentrate on. It is not a huge building that we've never asked for. I'm sorry.
Other trustees?
I'll go then.
Okay.
What I'm hearing here is what I've heard for the last 35 years that I've been in town. And it's gone before the board, and I've heard it from the citizens. We can't afford this. We can't do this. And this is why we're in a mess with our water and sewer now. We couldn't afford to fix the water and sewer. It's not a priority. And it went for 35 years. I mean, it has only become a priority since I got on the board 2 years ago. And we knew it was more than a priority before that, but we didn't go after the money. There wasn't the political will to do it and raise the water rates. We raised the water rates $5 and people are freaking out. We should have been raising the water rates from 35 years ago. It should have gone up $5 or $10 a month just to pay for the maintenance. What we have been doing is putting Band-Aids on things. What this is it's a big spend, but it also is an opportunity for the town. There will never be another opportunity such as this. If we don't occupy the entire building, I'm relatively certain there's ways of handling it so that we're not spending as much money heating the whole building. We did, with the room we met in was at about 90 degrees. And that's obviously a maintenance problem. They're not, I don't know if the thermostats are no good or what, but that room that we met in at the end, it was extraordinarily hot, the band room. There were other rooms that were quite chill. So things have not been really taken care of. And the school district has not taken care of maintenance for a number of years. They went the cheap way on that roof. Spraying rubber on foam is never the way to do it. That technology was thrown out in the 70s. Nobody serious in building maintenance would use it after the 70s. That's when in the 60s, they came out with the foam and then the rubber coating went on it in the 70s. And it just doesn't work. You're ended up every 5 to 7 years redoing your roof at a fairly expensive rate. And in a little less than 30 years, you've already bought a really expensive roof. So I see this as an opportunity for the town. It's not going to be the hugest cost. I think there is some definite, we're going to have some remodeling done and some planning done. Part of the thing is though, we're looking at the grains of sand on the beach and we're not looking at the horizon. We need to look 35 years down the line. Is the town going to need that space in 35 years? Are we going to need the space for the community in 35 years? One of the things that we have on this town is lots and lots of space in our commercial core that is now tax-free or what's the word?
Nonprofit.
Nonprofits. And nonprofits don't really bring a lot to, yes, they bring a lot to the community, but it doesn't bring much to our tax base. And it hurts. And one of the things is this place sucks up a lot of commercial space. It also has a 40-car parking lot in the back, which is, by the way, the only parking lot on Grand Avenue. Making this a very valuable piece of property, whether you sell the parking spaces or lease them or whatever you do. But I think I'm not looking to make a profit for the town, but I'm looking at 25, 50 years down the line. They built this place in 1983. It's inadequate. We don't have enough room for the police. We don't have adequate office space for our office people. And we're bringing in another one. We actually cleared out storage space up on top, which isn't really it isn't ideal. It's not very well air conditioned. This building wasn't designed for that. That was designed for storage, and we cleaned it out and made an office up there. And it's inadequate. So I'm in favor of looking into the future and seeing if we can do a long-term investment in the town.
Other trustees. Look at each other.
Okay, I'll go next. So I really appreciate that that you organized the tour. That was really, really helpful. And I just started to informally poll staff about needs and what's needed from the different departments. And what I came down to is that the building is too big for us. Like, it is too big, but I think in order for it to work, we have to have key partners in there who, it's a collaborative thing. So for example, the senior center could be one, but they're just small compared to the size of the building. I will say that the timing is bad. Ideally, we would have more time to do our due diligence and come up with the answers to these questions. Like, this isn't ideal at all. So that we'd have time to just flesh this out and to say, is this the right decision for us? I do have a question about the 1.5 million. How did we come to that number? And do we think that the school board would take significantly less? And then we could apply to use these grant funds to actually go through the process, the remodel, and have the resources so we don't have to just nickel and dime and skim through it. But if we're going to do this, let's really do this right. So that's a question that I have is, how did we get to 1.5? I know it was like 2.5, but how did we land at 1.5?
I think Stephanie and I put our heads together and said 1.5.
And what I'm curious about is, what if we went with a lower number, significantly, almost radically lower, 500? I'm just saying 500,000. I know we're on public record. And to give us some leeway so that it would reduce our matching funds. But if we had some real money to work with, to invest in this building, to make it what we want, so it doesn't burden staff. So that's what I'm interested in. Is I think that in the long term, this is a good thing for the community. If town owns it, if town's in control of it, that we have key partners that we work with. I like the 3rd Street Center over in Carbondale, even though it's not a public building, they took an old elementary school and made it a thriving, beautiful community nonprofit center. And it's really inspiring. And so I am for the building, but I'm not for the building with these current terms. Like, things feel a little bit nebulous, and I'd love to be able to give us some breathing room in the form of more money so that we could do this build, we could do it right.
All right, Trustee McGinn.
Yeah, so hearing the dissent over the past couple of meetings and the dissent that I've heard kind of as a citizen as well, I think most of the frustration that I'm hearing is coming from, we don't know the plan. Like, if and or when we get this building, what is the actual plan laid out? What are we gonna do with it? What are the options that we're considering as how to fill it or not fill it? How much is it actually going to cost us? So I think part of, and I feel the frustration because part of it is seen as an opportunity, but an opportunity that we have to take right now because there might be another buyer and it might get snatched out of our grasp. But I feel like jumping up on the opportunity just because somebody else might do something else is probably not the correct motivation now. I agree with some of what Trustee Schwartz is saying as far as like, let's actually take time to flesh out a plan, how we are going to use this building, what are the actual costs. And if by the end we decide that it's the right thing to do and the building is still available, let's go for it. And if the building is not available, then it's been sitting empty for however long. And just now at the end of the race, we decide to try and get in. So I think there might be, not to find a lesson in here, but it feels like if we are pushing ourselves against a clock, it is kind of too little too late. And yeah, that's my kind of take of this situation.
What else? Okay, well, I do have to say the grant deadline is March 26th, I believe. So if we were not go for this grant, then we could put in we also asked for the same amount that we asked for the raise grant from the senators. Would you put that in and not put this in, but this grant opportunity?
You're going to do both.
Well, yeah, we're still, well, my thing, we won't do the school, we will do the raise grant. We won't do the school, but we'll do because we have talked to them about two possibilities.
Thank you.
It is too late in the stream to
change this.
Yeah, to change this to something else. It's too far down the line. So we would lose the opportunity to get this money. And, listening to what the senator's office says, we have a pretty good chance of getting this money. But
So for the congressionally directed spending, that form or application is due March 29th.
Yep.
At 11:59 p.m.
Yep. Yep. So if we were going to do this, we need to do it now. Yes, Trustee.
Yeah, so I think I kind of want to address Trustee Schwartz's question of if we are looking at a heightened expense above and beyond the sale of this building, why not offer less to give ourselves that cushion? I mean, if we've applied for 1.5 and we offer 1, maybe not, 500,000, but if we offer them, then that extra money could go into some of this kind of nebulous expenses that we don't know yet, but we are then building ourselves a bit of a cushion. I mean, yeah.
And that could be a possibility. And correct me if you think I'm wrong. Okay. It's just that, so right now.
The entire offer was contingent on board approval.
Right.
And so if there's an amended offer.
Yes, from the board. And we could still go ahead and go through with the congressional discretionary spending grant, the way it is presented. And try a different offer, try a lower offer.
And if we did that, so if we said 1.5 million, because that's what you've talked to them about, and would we have to be specific? How specific do we have to get? Do we have to say, I'm going to go with 500 because I like that number, but but do we have to say like how much leeway would we have knowing that there's still like how much do we have to get detailed? Because I thought I had heard we have to give a pretty detailed budget.
It doesn't have to be really detailed. I mean, last year we did this with the 2.5 million in closing costs. And that's what we submitted and that was fine with it. So it doesn't have to be that detailed, but it would have to be such that I'm sure we would have to have the price of the building in there. Or, I don't know, I haven't seen the grant itself, because I think, did you get it, Stefan?
We did receive it on Monday.
Yeah, okay, so it was sent to Mr. Renner on Monday, but it has not been sent to me, so I would have to take a look at it to see exactly if we could tweak it.
And are you referring to the form you have to fill out for the grant?
Yes.
Could you share that online so everyone can see what that form looks like?
Sure. So, and this is to be clear, like, you know, the USDA offers this program separate from congressionally directed spending.
Right.
But you do have, it's a very competitive process, right? This is going directly through our senator's office. So here's the form. I'll just start populating some fields, click through it. So this is the official request form. Continue to populate things to.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one of those forms.
Yes.
Lots of practice.
Very accurate.
Oh, I don't want my mobile number on there. That was dumb, Stefan.
Is it possible to see a grant that was, you know, when you can see where they've given money previous years? Do they show the grant application for the ones they awarded? So you can see see what the grant even looks like?
No.
I'm sure the USDA does, that's separate but kind of same program. But this is a program so that Senator Hickenlooper will go, yeah, I want this in our.
Right, we don't have to write it.
Congressional. Oh, that's my home man.
Right. But I want to see the content of the grant. So I wonder if the US,
No,
if there's a way to
we
see
can't. I
it.
mean, that's the thing, that what they will give you is who got the money, but they don't send out what the grant.
You know, because it's concerning to me what exactly you have to put in this grant. And in the absence of knowing what questions they even ask,
So
it's pretty hard to know how to populate.
Yeah, statement of project, their purpose, the address, I mean, stuff like that. I mean, the big things are the project, a description of the project. So describe the proposed project, purpose is consistent with the activities and missions of the local agency, that kind of stuff. And then there's also a section that was in the last one that has to be in this one that says how this will benefit and fits in with a benefit for the state.
So this,
community.
yeah, and this specific program through the USDA, it's for community facilities. And they do talk about utility services, but it's things like telemedicine, distance learning, and which isn't applicable.
That you can't buy it.
But it is for public facilities such as town halls, courthouses, airport hangars, or street improvements. Which we wouldn't qualify for airport improvements because we don't have a FAA approved. Yeah, it's a nightmare. Runway's too close to buildings. But these are the questions that I guess need to be answered as part of the ask. Total cost of the project, it doesn't really tell us to go in depth. It just says what's the total cost. So
we could possibly break it out that way and say, we're going to do this much for the building and this much for renovations.
To equal 1.5?
Yeah.
If I can ask another, so what we have in front of us tonight is the contract with Needle Rock.
Yeah.
So how can you go forward with this unless, can this be put through without a contract with the realtor?
We probably need to have a offer put on the table for this to go through.
And I have the same concern I had 2 weeks ago, and that many of the dates in here are now in
they would all
arrears.
have to be changed.
Well, then, what are we voting on? This is
It's the making of an offer.
right, but
The paperwork would come back with all the dates changed, and they know. I made the point of letting Liz know that the money probably would not be there for a year and a half. So they know that.
I do not see in here where we are protected from losing our earnest money.
Well, it was Nick's opinion that we probably would not have to provide that interest money until we have funding. And
Right.
that's what all of this is contingent on.
Right, but he was not sure of that either.
Right, but so what?
What was that?
Yeah, I did take a look at the contract and there is a requirement for the earnest money here soon. But if you terminate the contract, if you've got a right to terminate the contract, then you do get that earnest money back. I certainly think you could request that the earnest money deadline be changed to a later date.
Can you tell me what the date is right now in here?
Let me get to that.
Have that in front of you?
I had it at one point and now I've lost it, but just one second.
Even if we we can make an offer, whether they accept it or not, it's gonna have to go through the school board, and so there's red tape involved in all of that. So by the time this grant is due, we will not have an answer from the school board.
And your earnest money deadline is March 22nd.
Can do an amended offer.
Yes, exactly. We
With
can
a
do an
lower
amended
price.
offer. And then, of course, all the dates will have to change and all the rest of that, and new paperwork will be created that would reflect the amended offer.
May I
Yeah.
ask just a clarifying question? So knowing that we won't know if the school board is going to accept our offer or not before the grant deadline of the 29th. We could, we could put in, so if we just said 1.5, and that includes the purchase and capital improvements.
Yes, capital improvements.
That would give us time to go through, because I don't want to vote on this. I'm like, this is not correct or anything, but it would give us a little bit more time. And personally, as long as this grant includes a significant amount of seed money for us to do the improvements and the renovations in the roof, that takes a lot of that worry out of me. It gives us time to do that planning, to find the right partners, someone to help oversee it so it doesn't fall on town staff. That to me is where my big hang-up is. I don't want this to be a burden. And I think this is a really good opportunity. And if we had grant money to do this, I say, why the heck not? There's a chance we're not going to get it, but at least it gives us something.
So we would know by September.
Yeah.
At the end of September, which means that we could back out of the contract.
And I think I read, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think I read that we may not get the money for another 1.5 to 2 years.
That's when actually the money will come to us, but it's still, I mean, we're gonna have to jump through hoops once it's even the appropriations bill, and once the appropriations bill is voted on and approved in the budget, then the money can be released, and then there will still be hoops to jump through with the USDA.
When we were looking at the roof, Marcia mentioned that the last coating of the roof cost $167,000. And in my opinion, that's not the way to go. I would go with a true EDPM membrane onto that roof. Expensive, but if we drop the price, if our offer was $1 million and we have $500,000, I believe that would cover that roof fix for sure. And we'd still be in a pretty good space. EDPM is expensive, and of course, we've got to go around all the equipment on the roof, but that's what roofers do. And I've been involved in buildings where we put those on, and they pitch the roof with styrofoam. It's custom cut. And there's a company in Denver that does that. So many, many years ago, like over 20 years ago, I worked for them selling the pitched roof material. I have no financial interest in that company, and I haven't even talked to them in 20 years. But the technology's there, and we can get it. I am a little leery of the money. But again, we couldn't build 1/10 of this size of that building for what we're offering for it. Not to mention the fact that it's on a large chunk of land directly in town. The opportunity is here. And that's all I have.
So, I mean, would the board be comfortable with making a lower offer to the school district? Okay, well, we need a number.
No.
Okay, okay.
Because let me just say one more thing. We don't need 34,000 square feet. Trustee Stelter has talked about what it would cost to build a tenth of that. I would like to opine that if we truly needed a new town hall and public works, we have 3 acres right outside of town that we could build to design, and we could get grants to do a building for exactly what we needed and not be competing with the rest of the town for renting space, et cetera, and could turn some of that into a park. But as it is, I feel like this is where you're trying to fit a shoe with a shoehorn. This, to me, is backwards to how a town should plan for its infrastructure future and its town hall and public works. You build it to you build it to what you need, not start making up things that can go into 34,000 square feet. And one thing I didn't mention for people who didn't go through the building, the cafeteria is covered in asbestos flooring. Much of the edge of it has worn off. You have to cover all that. We have no idea what that will cost. I don't know how many square feet that is, but that is a hazard because it has the potential to be friable if you just have chairs going back and forth on those raw edges. So again, I feel like we're going in with blinders on. That's why I don't want the building at any cost.
And then, there is, all that asbestos can be abated with a brownfield grant.
Another grant for when we need grants for our water system. And I know we didn't do this for 3 decades, but I can't explain that, but we now know we have a water system that could fail. I don't care how big a building you have in town. If you don't have any water, we are in deep trouble. So again, I do see this as a shiny thing. We have the input from the community, all the meetings we've had, infrastructure and housing. And I will give you this. The reason we did not do your original grant for housing is because you hadn't talked to anybody and you were changing statute. So we are now back to doing housing as we should. Because I have to say, I feel as though you make decisions outside of and don't give them to all of us. I didn't know there were other things we could have asked for from the senators. You came in, you and Stefan talked about it. That's not how we do public business. We need to have the full suite of things we could think about getting this money for, and I would like to do it differently next year. When I'm in the seat that you're in and I've learned what I've learned, I wouldn't have known this otherwise. But again, we have been given the towns what they want us to work on. Water and sewer. We have sewer lines that have to be replaced before they cost us a fortune. So to me, this is distracting from what the next set of trustees needs to do and what the staff needs to be able to do. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to just respond that we did have this discussion about what we should go for. It was the meeting, you weren't here.
I listened to that meeting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there was no.
We did. I asked the question about water. Should we go for water infrastructure or sewer? We did talk about that.
But what were you told? That you could? Because other cities have gotten it.
Yes, but it's a really high chance that you won't. It's really, really, you have a much better chance of getting any other funding than to go through this for that.
But that doesn't stick with our priority. We have a priority that we have set. So
we are investing in that.
Not enough.
The problem is to get all the infrastructure money that was put through the building, IIJA or the BIL funds. all the water infrastructure money went to SRF loans. The SRF, that's where it all got funneled to, because when that list came out, the very first time that list came out saying what that funding was going to be used for, I went straight to water, and it all went to SRF. So all this money that is available is only through that program, and we are applying to that program.
But isn't that a reason to go to the senators to say, we have this huge need, SRF is now being, it is being depleted. There's no question, because I've read about it. The money is not going to be there for very long. To me, that is an additional need to say, we may not get the money we need from SRF. Would you please consider giving it through the congressional budget? To me, that sticks with the priority that we have all agreed to. But just to say this could get money is not the way you go about doing public business. I'm sorry. You know, and I'm an incoming mayor. So I am going to be faced with, I want to make sure all trustees are fully aware of everything behind the decisions they're being asked to. I read the packet for the meeting where you all asked. There was nothing in there. It's just has not been, to me, well fleshed out to be in this position to say, well, if we don't get this building, gosh, we have nothing. That's my problem with this. We are diverging from what our staff who are stressed need to be working on. And we have new staff we're going to have to hire, which are going to take, it's going to take time for them to learn the things that we currently need to be doing.
And we're talking a year and a half minimum down the road. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done in a year and a half. Yeah.
Can we call a question, please?
Yes, please. So would somebody like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve an offer of $1 million for the school building.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, that motion dies for lack of a second. Anyone else like to make a motion?
I move that we drop this subject.
What does that mean?
It means it's dead.
It's dead.
Yeah.
I would second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Can just give me a second.
Yeah,
I have
please,
to think.
please.
What I'm thinking, we didn't have a comment period about that. So it's really hard for me without trustee Knudsen and trustee Valentine here to make such a, like, feels like we're operating just thin margins.
Well, I know
So-
trustee Knudsen is against it. Trustee Valentine is for it. So we're exactly where we are.
Okay. I'm an aye.
All right, stick a vote out there, Morgan, even though the motion is passed.
I don't know. I think this deserves further discussion. So I'd like to say, no, we don't drop this.
Okay, so 3 ayes and 1 nay. All right. Motion passes. This issue of buying the school building is now gone. All right, moving on. Consideration of approval of fiscal year 2022 audit. Thank God it's not about time.
Okay, so on our screen right now is the financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2022. This is considered the final draft. We got it this morning. So what you saw in the management discussion and analysis letter will need to change. The final numbers will need to change. But the good news is they'll change for the better. So the issues were with our assets, and that assets weren't booked or weren't in the trial balance that was sent to the auditors correctly. So there were a number of things that were after my review and our professional management solutions review found that, hey, there's actually more assets than what was in there. So I think the best way to go through this audit is to go with the MD&A that has to be changed. I'll have to work on that this week to get it sent in. But here's the management discussion analysis letter. So this is a draft that you guys I provided to you last week in an email so you can review it. I've already met about some questions, and I think answered them. And I tried to answer them in an email this afternoon as well. But the good news is our net position is really good. And contrary to what you've been told over the years that we have no money, we currently today have $5.1 million in unrestricted funds in the bank. I'm sorry, let me back that up. Not unrestricted. We do have some unrestricted funds that are restricted funds that need to go for like debt service that are sitting in common trust, and for our bridge, our bridge fund that has to be, those are restricted, which brings it down to 4 million and change. If going through this management discussion and analysis letter, one of the big takeaways is that fourth bullet point up there. At the end of the current fiscal year, knowing that that is fiscal year 2022, unassigned fund balance, that means unrestricted cash on hand in the general fund alone was $1.7 million, or 144% of total general fund expenditures. Means we can operate for a year and a half without bringing in any other revenue. That's way too much. It needs to be spent down, or we may run into issues down the road with Tabor. I don't know. So these are issues that are good to have, or it's good to have, but it also means that, and I'll discuss this later on in the MD&A about our budgeting. Budgeting in the past has been lacking or forecasting incorrectly, and I'll get into that discussion a little bit. What you'll see is a marked difference between management discussion and analysis letters from what you've seen over the last decade and from what was presented. I do have to say this was my first MD&A that I had to create, including creating worksheets. Typically I review, make comments, somebody else does the work and then brings it back to me, and that's what's presented as the MD&A. This one I had to write. I had to make the worksheets. They didn't exist. What you saw in previous MD&As were like, or just the top two lines to the right. So what you'd be looking at is the totals for 22 and 21. Oh, I'm sorry, this is page 4 of the MD&A.
Okay, thank you.
But this worksheet had to be created so you could understand what was actually going on with our finances. I do want to go over this part here. So what you're looking at here is just explaining what proprietary funds are, what the general fund is, what governmental activities are, what business activities are. And so business activities, I'd explained earlier, because I brought this to our department head meeting as well. Business activities are the same as enterprise funds, right? It's our utilities. But that's what these are. So in our MD&A, because I didn't have the final draft, all of these highlighted things are my notes that I have to change those and actually put the page numbers in. So that's something that I didn't want to forget. So we didn't have blanks that we're going to submit to the state. So just simple, we have two different funds, governmental funds, which are made up of general revenue and our special revenue, and then business type activities, or proprietary funds. Let's see, we have.
Did you back that up?
Yes.
Proprietary?
That's our enterprise funds.
So could we just call them one thing?
No.
It's so confusing.
Yes, this is audit speak, right? I know.
It's like,
I apologize for that.
IT 101.
One of the things that I wanted to change, or that's different in the MD&A, based on the colloquial that we call one of our enterprise funds, called the trash fund. I don't like calling it the trash fund, so in my management discussion analysis letter, I call it the sanitation fund. It's our solid waste fund, right? So, but the notes of the financial statements, we have a handful of notes within the actual audit itself. And so everything that you see in like the analysis, so here is our analysis, our statement of net position. Yes, these are going to change, but they're going to change for the better because our capital assets were finally finished by our auditors and updated this morning. But what I've done is I've added things up from different things that you've seen on the audit. So, for example, our statement of net position comes from a couple of different things in like our statement of net position from here, as well as a deeper dive or into like our statement of activities for the fiscal year ending 21. So those things were pulled up. I went through, added things up, subtracted out liabilities, and came up with our statement of net assets. So, yeah.
Could you just do a description of what is a net position versus a statement of activities? What are they in English?
So a statement of net position is like adding up our assets, adding up our liabilities, and subtracting them from each other. That's as simple as we can.
And what is a liability?
A liability are things like expenses that we paid out, or long-term debt, or uncompensated absences, which we're reducing in 23.
Not what we pay for staff, not what we pay for cars, for gasoline. So a liability is not our daily expenses to run the town.
Right.
Okay.
So what else? There's some, I'll get into what else is in there as well. In our statement of activities. So some of those could be like any liabilities that we have outstanding from uncompensated absences, like we paid out some sick leave that we don't offer anymore, right? So it had been a standing liability since 2019 that the board elected to pay out in 23. And so you won't see that during the fiscal year 23 audit, where you'll see it being reduced because we elected to pay it out, right? So it's not going to carry over to 24. Does that make sense? Okay. So the good news is that we have a really, really good statement of net position. And it actually is going up to about 6 million instead of 5.7 million. So if you look in what we're looking at is the left column, that's for fiscal year 22. And these are, what you've seen in the past is kind of everything lumped together when they really should have been broken out as governmental activities or business type activities and then total up, right? And so that top line alone for assets, if you look at the capital assets from in 22, you look at the capital assets from 21, yeah, they did go down. Well, they went down because of depreciation. And I'm going to get into our capital assets down the road. But overall, when you look at compare our assets to our liabilities between the 2 years, that's that bottom double barred line. 21 was 4.985, and in 22 was 5.77. In our updated audit, it's actually going to be 6 million. That'll end up being our statement of total net position in the governmental activities alone. That's general funds, special revenue funds. In our enterprise funds in 22, we didn't really invest much in like new pipes and ground, updates to facilities, but it still went up. So we didn't do some investment. So that's those 1, 2, 3 at the total net position. Third from the left, it says $10.55 million in assets compared to 10.19 in assets for 21. We're still showing a positive or an increase in our assets. That's a good thing. So this is what you're trending over time, right? If you go back to 20, and I had to pull our 21 audit as well to get these numbers because it's comparison, it's analysis. It was a nightmare, but I did and was able to come up to see that, hey, we're actually improving, because that's the entire point of a discussion and analysis, is to look at how we are over time. The bad news is that this is actually a budget document that should have been done to help with our fiscal year 23 budget. We're out of that, right? And so it's not done, it's not ready to go. But it's something that wasn't ready, but it still shows us that we're heading in the right direction with our audit. Then you go all the way to the right. The last two on the right at the bottom, total net position, that's our total. So that's business and governmental added together. In 21, it was 15.1, and 22, 16.3. We're seeing a positive increase in assets. That's a good thing. You can see that the town's largest portion of the total net position, which was 68.33%, is its total investment in capital assets. We're investing in capital assets. That's a good thing. And I'll dive a little bit deeper into those capital assets. Yeah, go ahead.
What page are you on?
I'm still on page 4.
Okay, so where are you talking capital assets? Where is that?
It's the final paragraph.
Thank you.
Yep.
I can't read that.
Oh,
here.
exactly. Sorry.
So I'm going by my.
By what you've got, sure.
Okay.
And I think that last paragraph there is pretty telling of the fiscal health of the town, right? At the end of the current fiscal year, the town of Paonia is able to report positive balances in the government as a whole, as well as for both its governmental activities and business type activities. Activities showed positive growth, net position increased by almost $800,000 for governmental and that's just in governmental activities alone. And net position increased $355,192 for business type activities. Again, we didn't invest as much in our infrastructure or enterprise utility stuff in 22. But the town's overall financial position improved during fiscal year 2022. That's a good thing, right? This is a summary of changes in net position. So when you look at our governmental activities, you'll see that we offer programs and we increase the charges for services compared to 21 to 22. So those charges for services could have been like building permit applications, dog off leash tickets, things like that, right? That's what makes up those charges for services. And that was taken from the audit for our statement of activities, which was broken down into more different revenue streams, and I had to add them again. We did receive operating grants for governmental activities in 2022. I can't remember what that was from, but we did receive an operating grant. It may have been, we actually used some ARPA funding. I don't know what it was, but it was listed in our audit. When we look at general taxes, they did go up, and this is a lump. This isn't property taxes went up or assessments went up. This was sales tax. And, sales tax and occupational taxes were actually had an incredible marked increase. And I discussed that later in this MD&A. And I attribute that to COVID was lifting. 2022 saw an increase in picking in the park attendance. It saw an increase in downtown activity. And so a lot of that was because people were spending more dollars. Could have also been stimulus money, for all we know, right? People have more money to spend, and so that increased. By the way, I learned on Friday, I'm being published in the Journal of Public Finance for participating in a study about, it dawned on me, I got the email from my former professor, but my concern, my contribution was what happens when ARPA money's done? What happens when it's gone? We saw stimulus money come in. It probably increased this, but what happens in 24 and 25 when that stimulus money's gone, right? It's people have exhausted those funds. Will we continue to see an increase in sales tax? It's nice stuff.
Totally.
And I changed it from Neptune Beach to Paonia, so. Then we look at like total revenues that came in. You can see that there's a marked difference in governmental activities between 21 and 22. The big thing, and you'll see a lot of zeros in business type activities for operating grants, capital grants, and then taxes, because we don't operate our utility on taxes. It's operated on charges for services. And you can see a change from 21 to 22 in charges for services and business type activities. Y'all raised the utility rates. So it shows it actually brought in more revenue. And overall, in 2022, we saw about $1 million more in total revenues. So that explains our net position, right? Now, so you start at the net position and you get a little more granular by looking down towards like summary of changes in net position, that governmental business activities. You can see the program expenses for general government. It did go up. That could have been for building permits that came in. Public safety obviously increased. You can see that it increased. But you got to remember when Matt started in April of 2022, he had a dwindled department, had to do hiring, right? So we started restaffing our police department. So that happened. In Public Works, Corey was afraid to spend money, and it shows. But so you can see that difference between 21 and 2022. You'll also see zeros for like in the business activity because we don't really subsidize enterprise utilities with the general fund. We just don't do that. It's supposed to be self-supporting. Okay, and then you can see excess. So excess is total revenues subtracted from the total expenses. And so you can see we had surplus, right? We had surplus revenues to expenses, and that also helped our change in net position. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. Exactly what I just said kind of is put into these paragraphs for governmental revenues. And I contemplated that it could be the result of COVID-19 pandemic going away, stimulus funds coming in. But we also saw a large increase in our investments. I attribute that to the Federal Reserve jacking up interest rates. It worked in our favor for investments. And so we went from seeing like $1,200 a year generated on our investments to $20,000 a year. It's a big difference. And that's for each investment. It's huge. So that mattered.
Well, and look in your CML thing that you got, because that CML did an analysis on exactly this thing of where town revenues came in, and everybody got a big jump in it.
So, and I know that there was supposed to be something prior to my arrival where the former finance director was supposed to transfer funds out of UBB and put them in College Trust. She didn't do that, but I was able, and so it's passed, like that's gone. And so what I was able to do was get UBB to match College Trust and keep it in there. So we are seeing about a 4.82% interest rate on the was like $2 million, now $2.3 million in that account. So we're doing pretty good.
And I'd like to add, in her defense, she had told me that she got UBB to match, but she didn't tell the trustees.
Right.
Oh,
exactly.
I got them to match it just recently. It was a 875%.
She didn't get that applied?
I didn't see it. I saw it to the other trusts. So we have 2 other CDs. I saw it applied to that, but not our money market.
Yeah, no, it was supposed to be the $2 million money market.
So I got it to.
Okay, well.
Oh, God.
It happened though. Okay?
Yes.
This is a breakdown of governmental revenues by source. I like charts that actually matter. And so like this chart shows that the majority of our revenues was for some of the programs that we offer came for charges for service. From taxes, 83% came from taxes. And then the next largest was like our charges for service. And then I break that down a little bit further in the next page. So go to governmental activities. So these are these are the services or programs that we offer based on department. So general government, that includes my department, but it also includes the building department. And you can see that the net cost of services wasn't really that good. We didn't charge it. What this is showing is that we were subsidizing our building permits by not collecting enough revenue from the actual cost of the permit from our third party. We weren't recovering those costs. We were subsidizing the general fund revenue. That's what we were doing. And so that's what this shows. That's changed, right? So that was one of the things I identified early on in my tenure and made that change. Public safety, this is normal. So total cost of service and the net cost of service being really close to each other, that's normal for public safety. So this isn't like an outlier. It's not something that it's a red flag. This is normal. Unless you want a police department that's going to send a ticket instead of a warning or gain compliance for every single thing. And I don't think you want that, right? We want compliance. So this is normal. This is normal. Public Works, this is kind of normal for them as well. And then culture and recreation. So I should caveat culture and recreation. The net cost of services is relatively high because we didn't receive the last round of conservation trust fund. So our audit wasn't done. And the audit was behind from 21 as well. You had to get an extension. So there's we've got a large pot of money sitting for us once this audit is sent to the state, and conservation trust fund will come in. We will have a budget amendment because right now there's over $200,000 of revenue that's been withheld from us. And so we'll have to see a budget amendment for additional revenue. It's a good thing, right? For fiscal year 24. So, but this is a breakdown of total cost of services and then that net cost of service. This shouldn't change our capital. This one I don't have to touch, which is great because there's a lot of math and formulas involved with this in the actual spreadsheet worksheet that I made. The total net and program cost. So this goes to show you the service that we offer compared to the net total cost. And general government shouldn't be that high. It should be a little bit lower for net cost. That green bar should be lower, that right cost, if we would have received the appropriate amount of revenue for the building permits, right? So that should go down. Public safety is exactly where it needs to be. It should be like 50-50, right? But they did offset some of that cost because they did tickets to folks, right?
What does culture mean in this, I get the recreation part. What activities define culture for the town?
This is what has been in our budget for decades.
Oh, okay.
And so it's culture and recreation. It's really parks and recreation.
Okay.
But it could be, I don't know if we waive permit fees for like picking in the park or something like that. So we do. So that's culture, right? We've got a culture.
Thank you.
Business type activities. So this is a breakdown of what you just saw for governmental, but just now for business or enterprise funds. This one I thought was really funny. I wanted to include it. 99% of our revenue is from charges for service. That's just the way enterprise utilities work. That 1% is a transfer from the general fund. I'm sorry, not from the general fund. It's from the sales tax for the capital improvement fund. It's a transfer from that special revenue into our enterprise utility, broken up between water and sewer. We're going to get into that in a second. So, but hopefully in the 24 audit, we'll see that this funding source is going to change significantly to include federal grants, to include state revolving fund, to include other forms of revenue to help with our capital improvements. I hope that this changes significantly.
So, question, Stephanie. So will that show up in the business activities or will that show up in capital improvement?
The actual revenue will show up as on the business activity side, because it's considered a capital grant.
Okay.
Right. And so federal capital grants or loans are not included in the 10% total for grants for business activities. That would trigger that TABOR requirement, right? Because they've been exempted from that. And so that's from a state attorney general opinion back when TABOR was first introduced. Okay. I get into like where the water utility was over the prior year, over 21. And that was the big thing. We had no capital contributions in water 22. Excuse me. This is also an update on like sewer and trash, sanitation. Enterprise fund summary. So what you're looking at are three different bars for each business activity, right? Operating revenue, operating income, and ending net position. So our operating revenue for water, that's the far left one. You can see we brought in a lot of revenue, but the cost of operating that utility is expensive. The good news is we had income. So we had a surplus of revenues to expenditures. In the business type world or the business type activities, we can actually call that income. And so it's really income, right? Our asset clearly is our water utility. It is the most healthy asset that we have. It's huge. The same thing can be said for sewer utility. It had an income. It didn't have a loss. Fortunately, sanitation and trash had a loss, but we fixed that with our fiscal year 24 budget. I found that the way that SRSA bills were being applied were not correct. And so like general fund held 25, and then the three enterprise held 25%, and I broke it up appropriately. So it did require a little more work, but we do have a fixed allocation now based on that SRSA for insurance. That's just one piece of it. We were billing or charging like 100% of Public Works employees' salaries to there, and it shouldn't have been because they pick up trash, not every day of the week. That they're doing other activities. So we did fixed allocations for their salaries as well, and their benefits. That was something else that was changed as well. So you'll see that it won't have operated at a loss. There was like in 23, because I made that change early on, and then in 24, we'll see that as probably income. So it's good. It's a good thing. It's actually pretty healthy. All of our business type activities are pretty healthy, which trash could use a little more health and assets, but the only asset we really have is a trash truck. So if we had a landfill, it'd be a different story. We don't want it. Just spitballing ideas. So here's a further a further analysis of like governmental funds, where we were and where we ended up. So of all of our ending fund balance, so that's like cash money, $2,471,248 in general fund, governmental activities. Of that, about 750,000 is restricted. So we're still doing really well with unrestricted cash in general fund alone.
And isn't a piece of that, that restricted $500,000 plus that has to go to the bridge?
It does, yeah.
Right, so that makes almost a big percentage.
It does.
And what was the other?
It was for a bond, so we actually had to have some debt reserve set aside, it's like 117.
Okay, so that kind of makes.
The 2020 bond?
It was one of them. It was either that or one of, I think it was that revenue. But in our major governmental funds, we're doing really well. The fiscal health is pretty good for the town. Like I said, today, when you add up all the cash in the bank, it's about $5.1 million. So I anticipate for the year-end 23 audit that will start in June, the worksheets are made, that will start in June, should be pretty similar. The only fund that I think will suffer is our wastewater fund. As you know, we had 4 emergency repairs in 23. And so that should show a dip in our actual unrestricted funds. But our assets will skyrocket. So there's that give and take, right? Still shows we're investing in our infrastructure.
Can I ask a general question?
Yeah.
For the audit, since you now have built this, will it make the 2023 audit so much easier to put together for the auditors?
They now have worksheets that they've built as well for us. And so their worksheets should be easy to just plug in this information, especially when we have an ending year statement of net position that they can just pop in. That makes those things a little easier for them to see trends, right? So yes, it should go smoother and it shouldn't take as long. But the next item on our agenda is like asking for an extension because they won't be able to get to us till June 1st, period. That's just the way it is. And I begged them, it didn't happen. And then, so the general fund transfer, and I have to update this. It needs to say the special revenue fund transferred, $47,475 to water and sewer funds. So that should be $27,191 to the water fund. I did say from the sales tax capital improvement fund, right? So it's 27 to the water fund and 20,284 to the sewer fund. So that was that breakup of that 47,475 that you saw in those transfers.
We don't really know why.
I'm assuming that they went to capital projects because that's what the money has to be used for. We did build that was in 23. I was going to say we did build a diversion box to the Lamborn water plant, but that was in 23. So I don't know what those were for. They just showed up in our trial balance.
Could have been a PRV.
It could have been a PRV. That's a very good
rebuilding of a PRV.
And we had 22 equipment in the water plant too that we had to redo.
Yeah.
We did have some pumps that went out, so we could have been those things.
There was that big water blow up because of the water hammer. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that wasn't 22. Was it 21? 23. Leslie was here.
I know Public Works has been working on PRVs, and so I can say it most certainly went to something like that. Like, it didn't go to salaries. I can confidently say it didn't go to salaries.
It's all blurred.
So, let's see. Okay, budgetary highlights. So this is where it was a little wonky. I mean, this is based on the worksheet, and I said wonky is a really, really important fiscal term. But this is looking at the budget that was prepared for fiscal year 2022 and being able to see what actually came in. And so actually, all three of us had a difficult time, all three of us being myself, our professional management solutions, and our auditors, deciphering the worksheets that were used for the budget. And it was very difficult. It was time consuming, but what we did find, we were able to see that fiscal year 2022, despite grossly misforecasting revenues, The final fiscal year 2022 budget included 208,345 in expected revenues, but the actual revenues received were 1,658,490, for a positive variance between the two of $1.4 million. All forecasted revenue in the general fund realized higher than the budgeted actual amounts. That's a good thing, right? So yeah, we might have grossly underestimated the amount of revenues, but it worked to our favor. The same can be said for the expenditures. So we had a favorable variance of almost $8 million, again, to a grossly exaggerated expenditure budget within all general fund functions. But the good news is revenues outpaced expenditures by $436,610. We saw a surplus of revenue. Very good problem. Capital assets. So this will change based on what we received this afternoon or this morning. It was close enough to afternoon because those capital assets are actually higher than what we had in the last draft that I based this MD&A off of. Non-depreciable assets. So these are land and improvements. These have been on the books, these exact amounts for a decade. So 246, 680, they haven't changed, right? These are land that they don't depreciate, it's land. And that's just in governmental activities. And then you can see 834,000 in business type activities. The total non-depreciable is just under $1.1 million. Our depreciable assets. So what we do is we compare 21 to 22, and you can see that equipment was the depreciable asset that increased in governmental activities between 21 and 22. So we purchased vehicles, right? So something to that effect. That was our equipment that was purchased in governmental activities. You can see that infrastructure in the business type activities increased from 4.971 to 5.11. That means that we invested something in our business type activities, either water or sewer pipes. We did some investment. But you can see our equipment was depreciated and went down between 21 and 22. That hasn't changed within the final draft. We did see some increase in investment in infrastructure. Looking at the percent depreciated, so think of this as like a math test. 100% is really good, 80% is really good, but flip that for depreciation. If you have an 80% depreciated, that's terrible, right? Your asset has almost met its useful life. So this depreciation is really good. So go to the total between 21 and 22, 39%, and we saw an increase in depreciation about 3% to 41%. That's good, or 2%, that's really good. It shows that the board and the town has been making investments into our assets, into our infrastructure. That's why that's not 60, 70%. It's because as we invest, that depreciation continues to go down. Again, if it were like 60%, there's some problems. We need to look at investing more. Now, if I broke this down and got granular and looked at vehicles, then it wouldn't be so good. So, and we're going to see that with iWork coming in. So again, we're showing an investment in infrastructure, we're showing an investment in our assets. It's a good thing. The depreciation is down. And then you will see that like between 21 and 22 for those total capital assets those net amounts, where it says 3,262,000 compared to 22 of 3,192,000. That's a trend that we don't want to see continue over multiple years, because that means our depreciation is going up and we're almost exhausting the useful life of that asset, of our combined assets. So what you'll probably see in 23 is in business type activities, that number shoot way up because we did significant investments in our collections for wastewater. That's a good thing. We'll see that trend go down.
You're talking about the sewer pipes.
Sewer pipes.
Okay, thank you.
Long-term debt. So this has changed. This was my question to the auditors. Hey, something doesn't look right here. long-term debt shouldn't go up, it should go down. Did we miss a payment in 22? The answer is, the new audit shows that they've addressed my question, and they, for whatever reason, it wasn't included in the trial balance, the payments that we actually made to this debt. And so it will go down. So we won't see a negative 1%. We'll probably see a 1 to 2% reduction in that revenue refunding bond. So that's coming. That's a good thing. We didn't miss payment in 22. So we didn't miss payment in 23. Almost did, but we caught it. So, so long-term debt and our compensated absences, that's that last line, compensated absences. We don't have a line of credit, which, of course, we've got our UMB credit card. That's considered the line of credit. It does have a pretty favorable interest rate, but we didn't end the year with any sort of debt. So we continue to pay off our credit cards as we're loading them up, right? So that's good news. The compensated absences will go down. And so there was a discrepancy here. They actually went down in 22, so that's going to change as well. So our long-term debt is something that I really have to focus on for our MD&A. And if you wanted information about long-term debt, it's note 6 in the audit. And so all of our debt is analyzed or at least talked about in the audit, and it's all considered note 6. It's a pretty lengthy note. So I also, you always in an MD&A with economic conditions and next year's budget, because, it's a budget guiding document. I was able to look at kind of where we were and the revenues that we brought in. And I'm really happy to say that we showed increases over previous years for revenue, and that's due to sales and use and occupational taxes. So that sales tax went up, and then occupational tax on marijuana tax, that went way up as well. And so I saw those as economic indicators for both tourism and spending. And so it increased by 24% over fiscal year 21, which makes sense because there were still lockdowns, there were still things happening across the nation. I did want to make sure that our audit talked about the creative district and the change from when coal mines left to where, what we've tried to do to change our industry and try to increase or bring in and attract new industries into town. And so I think it's really important to talk about that because that's our sales and use tax. That's our property taxes. Those are things that we need in order to be able to function as a government. So you also have to talk about the things that are in place, and part of that is we have a serious lack of affordable housing that we talked about. It's something that you all heard in 2022. And we also had a water moratorium that limits growth. So, all of the ways that you bring in new revenue, we're kind of restricted until we can meet the conditions of like the water moratorium, or we can find new industries to come into town, right? So. And that's it for the MD&A. The last part is how you get a hold of me.
Oh, yeah.
So, but that was a really important part. And all of this is based on these worksheets from our auditors. So I had to go through, and I'll have to go through line by line again to update our MD&A.
And that's because you now have the draft from the auditors and you feel good about the numbers in the audit that you will then bring forward.
Yeah. And so what you'll see is the things I talked about, where we're saying, hey, we're healthy. They're just going to get healthier based on the final booking of assets. So what you'll see in an MD&A, that management discussion and analysis, is that our assets are going to improve further than what you just saw. It's a good thing. It's a good problem to have.
I know.
Thank you.
And as far as the audit goes and approving the audit, does the board feel that they are capable to approve the audit tonight, or do we want to have a special meeting to do that?
If you want a special meeting, I would suggest it to be Fridays. So sometime in the afternoon so that because I should have the MD&A done And then that way we can just upload it to the state and get it done. And release like $250,000.
Yes.
Including liens, so they're holding liens
Right,
as well.
and the $1 million grant for the water.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would say I'm comfortable approving it tonight.
Well, do you want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Do we need to have comments from questions?
Oh, I am so
That's
sorry,
right.
that is my bad. Public comment, please.
We clapped.
Okay. Okay, not verbal public comment. Thank you. Okay.
And, my question was, so I heard Friday afternoon,
If we have a special meeting, yeah.
I know, to upload it, that's your goal by the end?
No, if you approve it tonight, I'll probably work on this all day tomorrow and try to get it done before I leave this town hall. If not tomorrow, then Thursday morning.
So, all right, so you were, did you get your motion done?
I did. No,
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the draft audit, 2022 audit tonight.
I'll second that.
Discussion real quick.
Yeah.
So there is one more piece that you need to know about. I haven't done it yet. It's a transmittal letter.
All right.
And so that transmittal letter just says, it's fluff. It's all the fun stuff. It's all the fun stuff like what the town's made up of. And so it's fluffy stuff that was actually included in previous MD&As that should have been there. So you'll see a transmittal letter that'll just be fluffy. And I'll send it to you before I.
All right, any further discussion?
Okay, may I ask one more question? I love this so much and I love audits and all of this. I have a question for you that I have heard people in town talking about the need for a forensic audit.
Mhm.
May I ask you, as a person who just went through this?
So, I mean, this has gone now through 3 professionals, right? So it's gone through myself, it's gone through Michelle, who also went through her principal, Lorraine, at Professional Management Solutions. It went through an auditor for Hinkle and C Company CPAs or Hinkle and Partners, who was a senior auditor, and then it went to their principal, Jim Hinkle. We didn't see anything that was a red flag within like any sort of expenditures or things that you would be looking for, or maybe expected revenues that weren't met, right? We didn't see anything like that, any red flags like that. So as far as a forensic audit is concerned, there would have to be some sort of evidence that would, start that in motion. And if we had seen something, we wouldn't be talking about this right now. We'd be in executive session. I'd say, we're going to the CBI, because we discovered some malfeasance or misfeasance. We found something wrong. I can say that we're so healthy. I mean, if we didn't have a fiscal, a healthy position, I would be really concerned. I think some of it was that there was a lack of transparency about what we actually have in investments in Colo Trust. I think there was a lack of transparency as to what we actually have in CDs within our own bank accounts. And I think having that information and knowing that we really have like $4.1 million in unrestricted cash on hand is pretty incredible. So.
Okay, any other? Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the audit. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Yay!
In 2 months, we get to start on the next one.
All right. Item number 5, consideration of approval of an extension for the fiscal year 2023 audit.
Yeah, so both professional management, Hinkle wants to start now on the fiscal year 23 audit. The problem is our trial balance isn't ready. And the reason our trial balance isn't ready is because we have a number of assets like we just went through that need to be gone through, make sure that they're booked correctly. So I'm not stuck with a draft, that I have another draft that comes in later. And Professional Management Solutions has said that they can't get to us because they have other clients and we're kind of like the needy child, right? So, but they have a lot of other clients that are ahead of us. They said the earliest they can get to us is June 1st. Well, rather than just say, okay, we're going to try to run and get all of this done, I'm asking ahead of time for an extension that gives us until September 30th. I think we'll be done with our audit in the middle of June, so it'll still be a relevant budget planning document for 25. But we still need to have this in place, so we're not denied like we were this last time. And it'll just be done. So that's where we're at.
Okay. Comment from the public? Okay, seeing none. Somebody want to make a motion? Or do you want to discuss it?
I make a motion that we file this request for extension of time to file the audit for the year end December 31st, 2023.
Second.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right.
I got to caveat this one too. So because we were so late with this audit, in the past, the state auditor's office has said, no, you don't get an extension. And there's a chance that they could deny it, which just means we'll get it done when we can, and they'll withhold funds again.
What's their deadline? June?
Their deadline is June 30th.
All right, next up, consideration of ordinance 2024-01, amending chapter 7 and 10 of the Paonia Municipal Code. We have been through this a couple times, but Chief Lavender.
Yeah, so the highlights on this are that, and working with Nick previously, we made the adjustments, we removed the screening requirement for inoperable vehicles. That was discussed. We added the definition for grill, so that's clear now. And we made the definition of private household trash consistent with state law. Those are the three big changes that were requested and have been.
Comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, discussion from the board. I think it looks good.
I reviewed it and I thought it looked fine and it addressed all the considerations from the last meeting.
I think this horse is dead.
So then we need to vote on it. Somebody want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2024-01.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Next up, consideration of approval of updated facilities agreement for the school district use of Apple Valley. Mr. Wynn.
I would have said Mr. Cotton Bias, but because he really worked on this agreement, but there's been a need for this facility agreement for years. And so we're finally bringing something that I think the last one was a one-pager.
No, this part I can actually.
Sam can take care of it. Hallelujah.
I was the one who worked with Nick.
Oh, okay.
So it's very similar to the agreement that we've had them sign in the past with the addition of, is there an H in there?
Yes, there's an H.
Okay, that's new.
Yes.
So he said that I should direct you guys to that. Other than that, pretty much everything has been the same, but it does also put into writing the consideration of the agreement that we have with Northport Pools, Parks and Recreation as well, who the school is already working with for this year for tennis, because tennis started before we got to this. So that's the only new thing in there, other than just updating some other, like small things.
Okay. Comment by the public? All right, seeing time, board discussion.
I have one thing. You're going to see more agreements coming.
Good.
Because we do a lot of, there's been a lot of historic handshake deals that were never written down. So this is like the first foray into 2024 being the year of agreements.
So could we, I don't remember if in Muni Code there is a place for agreements, but could we upload these agreements to that slot if they're not already there? Just for reference purposes?
I'm still working on reorganizing it. I haven't put anything like that on there, but if I'm asked to or directed to, I'm absolutely okay with it. I always just wait for other people because I know one of our professional management solutions, one of the things she taught me is there's certain things that are probably better to be seen in office than online. So as long as you guys want it up there and security wise, that's fine. I'm happy to upload it. It's easy to do.
I use that repository quite a bit just to get historical stuff. So unless there's a reason not to. I think it'd be great if we're gonna have more agreements that people can see them.
I
Because
think
I could ask questions and I'll go, man, what agenda packet was that in? And it drives me nuts. So if I knew it was there.
Can I share something really quick?
Yeah.
We do have a repository for agreements.
Okay.
so we're talking.
Yeah, so it's under contracts.
Ah.
So
Yes.
this, even though it's an agreement, it really is a contract.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
where to find it would be great.
Okay.
And then I just have one last question. So it sounds like the school's been using the tennis courts forever. Has there ever been any problem with citizens want to use it and the students are there? Is their schedule put up? Has there been any issue?
There's always, from my understanding, been a schedule put up. They let know when the practices are gonna be and if they're gonna use it for something else. I know my kids, when they were in high school, I think played tennis on that court a couple of times, and I remember there being a big sign there. So, they're usually really good about, trying not to inconvenience other people, so.
Well, I just know with pickleball being the up and coming thing that's used a lot for
Are you
pickleball.
kidding? They're just gonna recruit some high schoolers to pickleball, you know that.
Which would be good, but I don't want to hear grumbling. Well, they go there and there's all these kids on there. You're gonna hear grumbling anyway.
Or you're gonna hear it from the students.
They're always on pickleball. I can't get them off the court.
Our coach won't let us play that game. Why not?
Thank you.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve the agreement with Delta County School District for the use of the tennis courts.
All right, we have a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. All right, next is a very, very sad,
Very sad.
very sad agenda item, and that's the consideration of putting out an RFP for town attorney. Unfortunately, Mr. Cotton Dias has resigned from Kelly PC, and he's unavailable to be our town attorney anymore. We do have a contract with Kelly PC and not specifically with Mr. Cotton Dias, so I think it's prudent that we put out an RFP. Yes. Ms. Cody? I can't see it. Coley.
Oh, no, just happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
My understanding is you have an interest in putting out an RFP, so we're more than happy to help with that and then to transition to a new attorney. With the loss of Nick, we won't be able to continue representing Paonia. We do have a lot of other clients that we're servicing right now. So, but more than happy to do whatever we can to make the transition as easy as possible for you guys. So.
Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate this.
Got a phone call sitting on an airplane. Even though Melinda came highly recommended from Nick as well. So.
Thank you.
So comments from the public? All right, discussion from the board?
I have a question. So it says he's unavailable to be the town attorney after the end of April. So does that mean?
This has since changed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was the second phone call I got on my way into a classroom with children. So the next day.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't receive that information when I wrote the thing up, so. We do have representation from Kelly PC for that in the meantime.
I diminished them. They were highly intelligent students.
So.
They're watching you.
Okay, can we get something from the board?
I make a motion that we put out an RFP for a town attorney.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that makes it.
And thank you for sending that. The RFP that's already ready to go.
Oh, yeah, never mind.
Yeah, so, all right. Well, thank you, everyone. I think we got to our agenda and we are moving on. All right. Thank you, everyone. I will adjourn this meeting.
You have a beer interest, you.
No. All mine would say writing grants. That's all. Thank you.